This is Graybeard for the Sylvan Reflections channel. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of the Appalachian, Camel Gap, Balsam Mountain, and Palmer Creek Trails backpacking trip. Here's a brief recap of part 1. On day 1, I traveled 9.5 miles on the Appalachian Trail and about 5 miles on the Camel Gap Trail to reach campsite 37. On day 2, I headed back on the Camel Gap, turning southeast on the Gunther Fork Trail. Part 1 ended 3 miles later at Gunther Fork Falls. Part 2 begins with my finishing the rest of the 4 miles on Gunther Fork Trail and 2,700 feet of ascent before reaching and turning southeast on Balsam Mountain Trail for just over a mile to reach the Laural Gap Shelter. On day 3, I took the Mount Sterling Ridge Trail, heading out the 3.9 miles northeast to the Pretty Hollow Gap Trail intersection, then returning to Laural Gap Shelter, where I continued south on the remaining 4 miles of the Balsam Mountain Trail. I did a quick 0.6 miles on the Balsam Mtn Road before heading east for 3.25 miles on Palmer Creek Trail. Then 1.3 miles south on Pretty Hollow Gap Trail brought me to the Cataloochee Horse Camp. A mere 1.9 miles later, using mostly the Cataloochee Horse Trail, I reached my car. In part 1, I hiked many miles, and yes, some of those miles felt as if they were vertical. The trail sides were inundated with soft green ferns, and the flowers, delicate and with their plethora of colors, shapes, and sizes, were in abundance. I was blessed with many streamside views and not a few water crossings before ending on day 2 at Gunther Fork Falls. After a good 20-25 minute rest, relax, drink some water, eat a kind bar, all that good stuff, I think we're ready to go and face the uphill to reach that short little spur of Balsam Mountain and Sterling Ridge. But boy, this is a beautiful little sliding rock type place. Normally I'd just take a picture, but since my camera lens just broke on me, I can't do that. So we'll just do a quick little view here. That rattlesnake plantain, that intricate pattern. I know I show it almost every video, but it is so pretty. So here's that water sliding rock looking thing I was just doing it. I was sitting over there on that rock because it made such a convenient, it's like a slab where you can just lie down like a recliner. That was nice. And looking up at it, but from that angle, you don't get to see all of it. From here on the other side of the water crossing, you can see it goes on up, and then up at the top you have a beautiful little picturesque, just absolutely gorgeous. I know it's just leaves, but when you love looking at nature, sometimes nature lets you know that it loves you back. That is, if you have the heart to look for it. These guys are just always so delicate and green. I love that bipinnate. So symmetrical. And of course, all of this greenery on the trail. You have some false Solomon seal. Only the blooms are all gone. Now you're starting to see the berries. You can see some trilliums that are past blooming. Some maples. See all kinds of beautiful things here. While I do love the vistas, you know, from the knolls and you look out over the mountains, these coves, little coves here, and you look in, it's all full of undergrowth, but yet it's opened up. It's a little bit opened up too. You can actually see within Oh, I love the ramp when it's in bloom. I've been seeing a number of these, but I just haven't had the time to show you. Now here's another blowdown that's going to make life fun. This one's actually not too bad. I can just get down on my knees and kind of roll under. It doesn't sound like much until you're dead tired with about, oh, I don't know, 20 miles under your belt already. Then it becomes a big deal every time you have to bend over or kneel down to do something. This one's actually not too bad. The last, 14 or 15 that I've been through on this Gunther Fork Trail. Gunther Fork Trail is almost as poorly maintained as the Camel Gap. And again, this is absolutely nothing against the park. I mean, they do tremendous work in the volunteer services with them for how little they're paid. I wish the federal government would recognize that they're underfunding this area and they need to do more. But that's just my personal opinion. The trail just had a slight open section where a couple trees died, but it is so pretty. You can begin to see the altitude we're starting to pick up here. What a beautiful sight. And here's some of the rattlesnake plantain with the blooms from last year, I believe. We back it out. There we go. And of course you can see the base down below. And here's a really cool find. This is ghost pipe or Indian ghost pipe. It's a parasitic plant, no chlorophyll. Really pretty. Come to an interesting point on the trail. Well, first and foremost, I kept waiting for that last crossing. Evidently, there was some trickle somewhere that they counted as a creek on the map. So, since I got about halfway up, I figured, yeah, I'm probably past it. Switch back over to the hiking boots. But I came across this real interesting area, I think. See what you think. First of all, we have some more pretty mountain laurel. There we go. That doesn't always focus when I want it to, and I'm too tired to do it right now. You can look through a little gap here. You can see, getting a bit of a view here of the mountains. Makes an interesting little profile, doesn't it? You can see back over to the left where we came from. And a little closer to home here. Looks like some type of, I don't know, like a bear hollowed it out just to rest in, or just naturally was that way probably. Makes an interesting little spot. Here's something you don't see often on the trails. This open scree or slide area where some event has happened in the past and it just hasn't been able to grow back. You can just now see that there are some trees starting to grow in it. But it opens things up, and when anything it opens up and lets in sunlight, sure enough, you start getting in all the brambles and all the little weeds and other undergrowth now that the sun's available. After the 3,000 or 4,000 feet that I've climbed, man, it has taken me 4 hours to do it. I'm just right about at the Balsam Mountain Gunther Fork junction. But I am really tired. It has really wiped me out. Anyway, as I'm getting up here higher in elevation, I'm about 5,400 feet in elevation here. You can see things are changing. We're getting into the spruce fir forest.
Actually, just kind of nudging into the lower edge of it.
And if you look around here, it looks like a
sort of like a moss-carpeted world. Everything has that carpet. You can see that carpet of moss, but it gives it sort of an ethereal feel. But I want to get to the point where I can lie down and let my heart rate rest a little bit. So let's keep going. Well, this is the one we've been waiting for, at least I've been waiting for. We are finally approaching the Balsam Mountain Trail. And after that, it pretty much levels out for like about a mile or so, mile point two, to hit Mount Sterling. Now, as tired as I am, I don't know if I'll do much video on Mount Sterling, but at least we're approaching the point I want to be.
I thought for sure this would be the sign announcing that I had reached the Balsam Mountain Trail.
Yeah, I believe it. Impassable on high water.
As it turns out, this was the sign announcing the Balsam Mountain Trail.
So where we came from, Gunther Fork. That's what we want. 0.9 miles. Okay, we'll head that direction. So, let's keep on keeping on. Well, we finally finished the 0.9 on the Balsam Mountain, but we'll hit the Sterling Mountain Trail, and I'm thinking we'll just bypass that for the moment, head on down to the shelter, maybe drop the pack with some of the less necessary items, heavy stuff, and maybe walk back up here on my own just a little bit. We'll see. According to my GPS, it should be soon. Oh, yeah. Guess the GPS is right after all. Yeah, we just came from there, 0.9 to go. Pretty Hallow Gap. Whoa. Yeah, okay. So, let's take this one down to Laural Gap Shelter. And I'll come back up here in a little bit. Maybe. We are about to hit the Laural Gap Shelter here. Yeah, there we go. You can, anytime you see a big clearing and it's getting close, you know it's probably what it is. Looks like a mass of hydrangeas around it. Typical shelter. Heavy duty construction. And a big open side in the other. Alright, so I'll need to go easy on the water until someone gets here. Boil all water, okay. But, as is typical for the shelters, you've seen them before, get the nice benches to lay these things out on. Oh, even one over here. Some stools to sit on, or benches to sit on. A fireplace, if you wish to use it. And then the sleeping areas. Okay, I'm gonna set up shop here. Morning. It's about 7:20. Just getting breakfast ready. I probably need to take it off the heat now. One nice thing about wood, doesn't mind a little heat. There we go. And we'll let that start heating up a bit. Since these are shelters, you're not allowed to set up a hammock in the shelter or in the trees around. You used to during the COVID lockdown and all that, when they opened the parks back up, and up until, until the last few weeks, a month or something like that, they would allow you under those conditions, in the name of social distancing, to be able to use camp around, actually set up tents and hammocks around it. Now they're gone back to, if you're booked at the shelter, if you reserved the shelter, then you sleep in the shelter on the hard surface. There are people who are still doing it.
Occasionally, you will see someone using their tent or hammock in or near the shelter.
And they say, well, it's close enough. Oh, and just plead, I didn't know.
If a ranger were to see them.
I said I would.
Meaning, I would follow the rules, and I wouldn't use my hammock in the shelter.
So, I'm going to follow the rules. But, that's the reason I brought air mattress, the thermarest, for that. Normally, I wouldn't do that with my hammock. I mean, there's some aspects about having a firm sleeping area that makes it easier to sleep, but then it's harder. So I never sleep super well on a backpacking trip. I usually sleep well enough. And I did pretty well last night. Like I said, it's about 7:20, 25, something like that. So I decided to just relax, take it easy today. And if it takes me until almost dark to get back, so be it. Just relax and enjoy an easy morning. And actually cook something. Yesterday I didn't bother. I just ate some a kind bar, some water, and got going. So now we're going to have some fun, or at least some relaxing time. Truly is beautiful, isn't it? The light filtering through the trees, almost like it's one of those paintings that gives you the feeling of being deeply within the woods. Absolutely beautiful. I've taken a real leisurely time this morning. It's about 8:45, so I figure I'll leave the shelter, but I'm gonna leave my pack suspended so it doesn't get in the reach of animals or anything. Early in the morning, yeah, it's always a risk to leave something for a little bit, but pretty much got the valuable stuff with me, and I'm just going to take a very quick look back up the trail where I left, and I think I'm going to maybe knock out most of that trail that we were looking at earlier. I'm just taking by the corral here, you can see. And we're going to head up there, take a quick jaunt, look down the trail for a little ways, and then come back, pick up the backpack, and head on down. But why carry the extra weight for just that short period? Well, as you can see, we are traveling light, as we mentioned a little bit ago. I just thought, well, let me head back up there to the Mount Sterling Ridge, get back on that for a little bit. And so I just took off and said, oh, that looks like the trail I came in on. So I followed it, went about a mile, and I thought, this is much longer than it should be. So I popped out my GPS, bothered to take a look at it. Let that be a lesson. Always check before you go somewhere. Double check. So I went, oops, went a little over a mile too far. Let me backtrack a mile. Then I went the short 0.2 of a mile back up to Mount Sterling, which we are here now. And it's, almost 10:30 or something like that, or 10. So I can take a little bit of a jaunt on here. Should be able to make the whole thing that I want to do. There's nothing of great value in the pack, so I should be just fine. I'll be back in not too long. Meanwhile, let's go exploring a little bit. If I had not been so tired yesterday, I would have tried to show you some more of the plants and some of the scenery It is just a Sylvan wonderland up here. I love the high elevation, especially where we're at now. We're just edging into spruce fir-ish. Not quite. I mean, a lot of northern hardwood in here, but you're starting to mix with it. Getting close. But look at this. It's just everything soft, beautiful, really pretty. Now that is beautiful. Up here at this altitude, there's quite a few that are still blooming. It is just such a rich color. And if we get over here to some of the ones that are not quite opened up, you can see, it's probably not focusing. There we go. You can see the color is just rich in red. Ah, beautiful. Ah, wow, wow, wow. Yeah, at the higher elevation, you get one of the versions of magnolia over the other, but there's Rose Bay and Catawba, I believe. But just gorgeous. Love this. Right on the ridge. And just like a covered tunnel. If I can. It's just beautiful, level trail. Gorgeous trees. Like I said, we're getting up into the spruce fir just a little. Just gorgeous. As you can see, the spring beauty is absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? I was such a rush. I don't want to leave my pack hanging there too long, that I didn't take a picture of the pretty Hallow Gap sign for the trail heading down there. Oh well. Oh well. May as well keep heading on back to the Laural Gap Shelter, pick up my pack, and keep going. This is the downside of powering down phone and powering down the gimbal every time I'm not filming. I just walked up, stopped right where I'm standing now, and saw, I thought, oh, a bear. No, but it was a wild boar, peccary, whatever you want to call it. Good size fella. And I missed it because I didn't have this up. Right there. He was right in the clump of ferns, right here. You can see him better now. Or not ferns, but standing right here. Right where that little tree stump is in the middle of the picture. Right there. Ah, missed it. But he tore off heading downhill. Oh well. Maybe one of these days after I get my good equipment, I can leave it ready to go all the time. Have enough battery for that. That would be cool. Working on it. Okay. There's the sign I've been looking for. Means we're back.
Just making sure you saw that we're on the Balsam Mountain Trail.
And come back down the 0.2 of a mile into the Laural Gap Shelter, and hopefully my pack is still there. It should be. It's an old pack, and most people are pretty decent. Well, we'll be there in just a moment. Okay, back into shelter area. Let's take a look and see if everything's still there. So far, so good. Backpack's still there. So let's head on over and we'll check it out. Okay, so everything was there. How about that? You expect it, given most people that you meet up here, but it's always nice to verify. But after about 8 miles of hiking today already, at a quick pace I might add, I'm a little tired out, so I'm going to have lunch here at the shelter as well. Then we're going to tank up with water and head on down. Sorry, once again, my phone is getting a bit unreliable. I was very disappointed to learn that it failed to record any audio for most of the remaining video clips. In this segment, I was mentioning that since nobody else stayed at the shelter the previous evening, I had to use my iodine tablets to treat the water. I liked this part of the trail because the lighting seemed to give it a bright and airy feeling. I enjoyed also watching the character of the trail change as I descended in elevation. Pretty soon I came to another junction. This was where I came up on that trail. Beach Gap Trail, that is, that I showed in my day hikes of Balsam Mtn Road video back in October of 2022. Off the Straight Fork Road. That trail you can just barely see. I was resting at that intersection I just showed you on the map and taking the opportunity to consume some electrolytes and an energy gel. I might also have been lamenting the lack of escalators on the trail. I was finally in view of Balsam Mtn Road. Trying to descend quickly, my feet were getting a bit sore, and that slowed my pace a bit. Finally, I had reached Balsam Mtn Road. Now it was time to do a bit of road hiking. While many people find road hiking to be less enjoyable than the trails, this one wasn't bad. When I was planning this hike, I somehow got the impression that it was only about a quarter mile to reach the Palmer Creek Trail. Actually, it was just over 6/10 of a mile on the road and a little bit uphill. After many miles of trail that I had hiked that were often rock-strewn and root-infested, the smoothness of the road was a highly prized luxury. I had mixed reactions upon seeing the sign for Palmer Creek Trail. I was happy that I had reached this landmark and was now under 5 miles from my car. I was sad because I still had almost 5 miles of hiking left to do. But it was time to get started. The trail started off very nicely indeed. It was flat, smooth, open, and a little breezy. I was really happy at the prospect of such a lovely, gentle trail. I started thinking that this would be a walk in the park. Well, technically it was a walk in the park, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park to be precise. I encountered a number of beautiful and enchanting features, like the streams and small cascades of waterfalls that you see here. I know I say this fairly often, but I truly love the way the Great Smoky Mountains National Park does the footbridges on their trails. They are not only eminently functional, they are simultaneously aesthetically pleasing, and with their rustic appearance, it blends in so nicely with the natural scenery. It creates a feel, an impression, where one can almost see the people of the past as they traverse these wild and beautiful mountains. Yet another wonderfully rustic footbridge. When you think about the logistics involved in getting out here and building something with such functionality, endurance, and visual complementarity, I've got to say that I am grateful indeed to whomever it was that chose this design for the park's small footbridges in the backcountry. The majority of Palmer Creek Trail turned out to be the typical narrow trail with the not terribly infrequent manifestations of rocks and roots to enliven
one's attempt to keep their footing. I was encouraged to see the junction with the pretty Hallow Gap Trail. I knew this meant that I was only a little over a mile from reaching the Cataloochee Horse Camp. At this point, I was mentioning that campsite 39 was just a quarter mile uphill from this trail junction. It was the one I stayed at during my Mount Sterling Ridge, Pretty Hallow Gap hike from October of 22. So I continued on down the Pretty Hallow Gap Trail. From this point on, I was duplicating that Mount Sterling Pretty Hallow Gap hike, so I had a fairly good idea how much I had left to go. The sign for the Little Cataloochee Trail was another welcome landmark that let me know that I was getting ever closer to my goal. The sign showed that it was only 0.8 of a mile to go, but that only gets you to the road itself. Due to the uncertainty as to where it was legal for me to park, I had decided to play it especially safe and parked by the trailhead for Caldwell Fork Trail, which added another 1.6 miles. I stopped to announce that I had finally reached the Cataloochee Horse Camp. Of all the many times I've come to the Cataloochee Valley, I had never taken the opportunity to walk or drive the half mile from the paved road up to the horse camp itself. It really appears to be quite nice as a facility. As you can see, it is rather pleasant looking, a rather enjoyable family atmosphere. At this point, I was feeling a bit mythological because I was dragon. Yeah, I know. It really isn't much of a pun, is it? But it was the best I could come up with at the time. Anyway, I knew I was getting close to the main road, so despite being low on energy, I quickened my pace a little. I rounded the corner and reached the road. Now, just 1.6 miles more to go to reach my car. While I have been on this Cataloochee Valley Road many times, walking allowed me to take greater notice and appreciation of the sights and landmarks along the way, like the Palmer Chapel here on the right. I passed through a couple of fields where quite a few elk are often seen. There are many signs that, with good reason, warn people not to get too close to the elk. One of the highlights of the trip, the eastern garter snake. Isn't it beautiful? Finally, I got a snake on video for this trip. I literally saw the tail end of a black rat snake on day 1, but was unable to record it. I even saw some turkeys. I do apologize for the grainy quality here. I'm afraid the video quality of my old phone is rather poor when I have to zoom in. Even so, the turkeys are still cute. Finally, the car was in sight. I quickened my pace, knowing that I'd soon be enjoying some very welcome air conditioning. I just wanted to thank you again for spending the time with me, allowing me to share this hike with you. We come to the end of yet another successful venture into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. If you like this video, please consider clicking the like, subscribe, and notification bell.